It is finally here. The Woodpecker Method 2 has just hit the forward chess shelves. Unlike its predecessors, which was about tactics, this one is about positional chess. So let's take a look at this book and how you can use this great study method to improve your chess. So let's first talk about what the Woodpecker Method is. Well, the name says it all. You are repeating the exercises that you study in a way that a woodpecker keeps going at a tree. You're going to keep going at the chess puzzles. There are 5 steps in Woodpecker Method. The whole idea of it is that you take a certain amount of puzzles or positions and you work through them over a certain period. And that is step 1. Cycle 1, study as many exercises as you can in 4 weeks. Now, of course, you can do this with any positions of your own, but these are in the book are specifically designed for this method, and they've taken everything into consideration. I mean, this book took 5 years to make, but the first book had its success of its own that we will talk about later. Point is, you take as many puzzles as you can or positions in this book, and you solve them in 4 weeks. Then you take a break from chess. Take a short break. It can be a day, it can be a week. You're just stepping away from the positions. Then we get to cycle 2. Cycle 2 is solving the same sets of exercises but faster. So now we're basically halving the time that we took to solve in our first cycle. So if you did 4 weeks your first cycle, or if you did 2 weeks your first cycle, you're halving that. So 4 weeks becomes 2 weeks. Step 4, we are once again going to repeat and take a break. And then what we're going to do is once again follow that up by halving the cycle again. So 2 weeks becomes 1 week. The Woodpecker Method has been completed when the full set of exercises has been solved entirely in a day, or after the 7th cycle, depending how long you take, how many days you took in your cycle. But what you're aiming to do is solve the same positions in a day. Now, there has been definite success in this method by one of the authors of the first book, Tikkanen himself, who started this method. And what he did is he solved 1,000 puzzles in this woodpecker way until he got to 1. And the results, they speak for themselves. He got 3 GM norms in a period of 7 weeks. So I think this method works. You should definitely test it out at home. If you want the tactical version, then the first book is for you. But the second book is really, really interesting because tactics puzzles, they're very accessible, but this book is all about positional chess. And solving these positions and seeing them over and over again really imprints the idea or the concepts in your brain so that they stay there forever and your chess improves. Now let's dive into what this book has to offer. There are over 1,000 exercises and different difficulty levels. We start with pre-ohm exercises, and these are very much about pawn structures the author deals with. They give an explanation of what each chapter is about, but you're basically dealing with standard positional moves in a variety of common pawn structures. Now, these aren't tactical combinations, as they say. You're not going to get 2 exclamation marks, but they're positional ideas that can either give you some kind of advantage, equalize the position, or just save a position that looks completely lost. So the author starts with public education and talks about how we've seen Magnus solving those positions, recognizing that this is from a world champion, which game it is, and whatnot. Now, the whole point for us is not memory, but they do give positions from famous games that are great to know and include in your public chess education. So the first 296 positions deal with this. Then it goes on to exam, which I think it's a very interesting chapter because it deals with positions that aren't necessarily from world champions, but that can arise from certain openings, like the pawn structures you will get from certain openings and how to go from there. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. Academic level, the last section of the pre-om, is again pawn structures, but this is just a tad bit more difficult. So first section, we're dealing with pawn structures over here. Let's take a look at some of these positions and then we will head on to part 2. Let's start off with this position from a game by Steinitz, the first world champion. Now, how forward chess works is that you'll have the book on the left side and your board, which you can adjust the size for, on the right. Since you are solving puzzles, you don't want to see the solutions right next to the board. So the solution is hidden until you toggle this, and of course it gives you the explanation and everything you need to know. But this is why it's really great to solve tactics on here. So white to play pause position, we can see that white, of course, has a much better pawn structure, has space over here. Let's use this highlight bar. We have a really great pawn chain over here. But how does white continue this? And also, since this is the public education section, it's nice to familiarize yourself with this position. It's a Steinitz game. Anyway, let's try to pause and solve it. Now, since we are dealing with pawns, the move here for whites is to push g4. This is a pawn storm. Black has castled, white has not castled. In the book, the knight retreats. And now the pawn storm just gets worse and white pushes h4. These pawns are just running down the king side, and black is very much struggling to stop this. So there's no big thematic, tactical idea here, but rather using our pawns to claim space, an important idea in pawn structures. Let's take a look at the second position as well. Pause for a minute and see if you can find what Steinitz once again played here for white. If you are correct, you would have seen another pawn storm pushing f5. This opens up white's pieces. White gets more activity on the king. Black, of course, has to capture, otherwise black's pawn structure will be terrible. We capture, and this has just allowed white's pieces to get a lot more activity. The knight can come in. Both bishops are in the game now. The rook can come up. And I would say it's a smaller pawn storm, but it has the same idea of using your pawns to gain space. Let's go to the second chapter, or the second exercise chapter, and take a look at the position using the tactics trainer. Now, the tactics trainer on forward chess allows you to solve the positions and get a rating for them. And you will be told if you're correct or incorrect instead of having to go back and look at the solution. So you just play, and then the moves for the other side will be played for you. So here in this position, this time we are playing for Smyslov, and we are black. What should black do here? Well, if you have taken some time to pause and find the idea, it's quite nice. In this position, black hasn't castled yet, so castling on the king side is asking to be mated, since white has a lot of play on the king side, but white is castled on the queen side, and this is where our attack should be. So the move here is b5. And as you see, the move for white was played automatically in the tactics trainer, g4. And now we keep with our pawn storm, opening up b4. The white knight moves, and our b4 pawn is joined by the a pawn, and black is a lot faster. You can see that at the end of the tactics trainer here, you will get the explanation of what has happened and any analysis from the position over here. Let us go on to the exam exercises. So some of these positions in the exam chapter will be about pawns and pawn structures, but they're also just thematic positional ideas. And they are games by players who aren't world champions. But what I really like, as mentioned before, are that some of these positions are arising from openings. And this is a very interesting way to understand opening ideas and play accordingly. So even if you don't play the opening, you have some knowledge to really understand what's going on. And if it is your opening, then this is a good way to test yourself and see if you understand what your goal is and what your opponent's goal is. For example, in this position, let's put on our tactics trainer. For example, in this position, we are in a French. We're playing for the white side. Positionally, it looks okay for both sides. We can't say there's an advantage. The point of this exercise is not to gain any huge advantage, but understand what Black's plan is. And if you know a little something about the French, you know that this light squared bishop is usually a problem. Let's highlight this bishop. I'm going to make it red. This is a red bishop. So this bishop tends to be a problem because it struggles to get a good square. I mean, the French pawn starts on e6, but this is a French exchange variation, so it's a little different. Nevertheless, the bishop wants to come out, and the bishop wants to come out to f5. So logically speaking, then we want to stop Black's plan of bringing the bishop out to f5, and that makes the solution to this puzzle queen f3. And it's something so simple, but it's a move that practically in your game makes all the difference, because now we have stopped Black from doing what they want to do. This bishop, we don't know where it's going, and white will develop normally. And if you look on the left here, we have Reti. We have ideas from actual games that the author thought were just cool positional ideas to include. But there are quite a few opening ideas here as well. So I think this is very, very informative, whether you play the opening or not, or just to understand different openings positionally. Now let's take a look at the academic chapter. This is where positions are just a teensy bit more difficult. And if you've noticed in this book, that's a good way to progress with your puzzles. Started off a little bit simpler and then progress to this level we have over here. Again, positional ideas, pawn structures come into play again. Let's take a look at this position over here. We are once again white playing for Steinitz once again. And as you can see, Black has two fianchetto bishops, wants to open the position. So what should white play here? If you took a good look at the position, you would have understood that we don't want Black to open up this dark squared bishop. So the solution here is then to capture on e5. Black won't capture with the bishop because then Black loses one of the strong bishops in the bishop pair. So Black takes with the pawn, and then we develop bishop c4. White has a wonderful position, and this g7 bishop doesn't look so great anymore. So lots of these kinds of positions in all of these chapters, positional chess, pawn structures, and just subtle ideas that once again can make the world of a difference in your game. Let us move on to part 2. Part 2 is all about positional rules of thumb. So these are not just ideas associated with pawn structures, although pawn structures are relevant to any positional ideas, but they give you really kind of guidelines to apply that you learn in these positions and can apply to various others. And there are 3 difficulty levels: medium, hard, and expert. Let's take a look at each. Starting off, let's go to our medium difficulty exercises, where once again, playing for Steinitz. Let's put on our tactics trainer. Here we are playing for black. White seems to have quite a comfortable position. This knight on e5 is well placed, and white is planning some kind of, hoping for some kind of kingside attack in the future. Pauses for a moment. What should black play? Well, if you found it, you would have seen black undermines the strong e5 knight, and this is what our idea is undermining with c5. Now, of course, if white captured, we could capture with either the bishop or the knight, and we're just challenging white's strong center. Rook d1 is a move given in the book. We capture on d4. White will capture back. You can see here's an explanation. After white captures back, okay, we're looking at it's in tactics trainer, but you can pause it and look at the examples. But we're going to capture on e5, and we just have a pretty solid position. Of course, a pawn can't take. The bishop is hanging. So bishop takes, queen c8. And suddenly black's bishop is open, the tension in the center has dissipated, and just one small idea of challenging the center and undermining a strong piece, which is a good idea to remember and to apply to other positions, changes the whole game. Now let's switch it up a notch to our hard challenges. First up, let's take a look at this position here for white. Pause the video for a moment and try to understand what is going on. How should white proceed? So, if your opponent's king has not castled yet, then the king is unsafe. And this means we want to open up the position to be able to attack that uncastled king. And in this position, we do exactly that with e5. Now, e5 is not just a move that we're aiming to open up the position with, but we are also having some tactics. Let's apply our tactics trainer over here. Right, so e5 is our move. Black couldn't capture because the queen was hanging. So instead, black plays knight d5 to block any attack on f7 or for us to capture this queen. So we'll capture on d6. And now, interesting position once again. Pause over here and tell me, what would you play as white? Well, white needs to take advantage of the time that they have here. They're better developed. Yes, we're pawn down, but that is to sacrifice for the open space. And we've got these bishops going down on the black king. So we continue with this idea, and white plays queen b3, putting more pressure on this knight over here. And of course, our bishop was pinned previously. Now the question is, do we defend our bishop, keep defending our bishop with our queen, or is there a bigger attack here? Well, if you have a queen, she isn't meant to just sit at the back and defend. Of course not. She wants to attack. And that's why white has a very nice move here. And this becomes a little bit aggressive. Queen g3. Of course, queen g3, but we're hitting the g7 square for checkmate. Black blocks it with f6, which positionally we love as well, because now moving any pawn is a commitment, and moving a pawn in front of the king can be a problem in future. For us right now, this is wonderful because our light squared bishop is just once again eyeing this black king. Now, final move for white, of course, the bishop is hanging, and we can create a nice pin here with this move, rook c1. Did you get the whole solution? Let us know in the comments. So this next exercise is definitely not an easy one, and there's so much happening in the position. Black is not fully developed yet, and we can use this to our advantage. Pause the video here, find the best way for white to continue. We'll also put on tactics trainer. So we need to take advantage of some weaknesses, and that is first up our move. Also, by the way, there will be some tactics involved in this position, but white starts with bishop a3. Now, of course, bishop a3 hitting the d6 knight. Black captures our rook. We recapture, and now knight e8, retreating the knight. Otherwise, of course, black gets terrible double d pawns. And now a very, very nice idea. If you didn't get this far, I suggest you pause once again, because this idea is beautiful. And that is that white plays knight d5. White basically says, you can capture my rook, but I will trap your queen with bishop e7. So if black captured the rook previous position, then we would have had bishop e7, trapping the queen since the pawn was still on c7. So instead, black plays c6, and now it's an open position. This was black's strongest piece, and we can trade it. So we've gotten rid of one of black's strongest pieces, and now we can start targeting this long diagonal, which is nice and open and just asking to be occupied by our bishop. Of course, we can't do that straight away, but after a move like queen c1, that's coming up next. And the explanation goes into depth on everything and tells you about alternatives, tells you about the ideas, and really in a short and sweet way, so that it's not long explanations, because you can't read an essay for the solution of every puzzles if you're trying to do 1,000 of these in a set period of time, right? So that's all for now. We took a look at a few really cool positional positions. Let us know in the comments if you solved them or if you have any comments about any of them. And I hope you enjoy the book as much as I have enjoyed going through it. I am definitely, over the next 4 weeks, going to try out this Woodpecker method in the positional side of things until my next tournament. It's a proven way of really improving your chess, so why not try it out? Until next time.